Welcome to the Dental MBA podcast, focusing on strategies for dental business owners and leaders to grow thriving and profitable practices. This podcast is powered by eAssist Dental Solutions, the nation's leading platform for outsourced dental billing and revenue cycle management services. All guests have been invited to share their insights based on their knowledge and expertise in the business of dentistry. Their opinions and recommendations are their own, and you should consult with your own professional advisors with respect to your own practice. Welcome to another episode of the Dental MBA podcast brought to you by eAssist Dental Solutions. I'm Penny Reed. I'm your host, and I am super excited to have Dr. Mark Costas with us today. You guys are going to learn so much from him. He's just not only an amazing business professional, an amazing human being, many accomplishments, very humble. And I know that you guys will walk away with a lot of tips and strategies to take your practices to the next level. So Mark, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Penny. This is really great. I mean, you and I have known each other from afar and recently reconnected at Thrive Live in Las Vegas, and that was one of the positive things that I pulled from that meeting is connecting with you in person. So yes, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So wow, so many different avenues where we could begin. And many of you may not know about Dr. Costas, which would be kind of a hard thing if you've been around in the dental industry, but it's sometimes that can happen. So Mark, would you share with us a little bit about not only what got you into dentistry, but what began to develop your passion for helping dentists and launching your dental success companies?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So gosh, let me take this back to high school, and I promise I'll be brief. So 16 years old, I'm playing in my very first varsity baseball game. I was the starting left fielder. Big kid gets up to the plate and hits a home run in my direction. I misjudged it badly and ran face first into left field fence. And with that, I lost, I broke or avulsed all of my anterior top teeth, and I broke my jaw. So that was 6 through 11, major trauma. And I was escorted off the field. And then when I woke up, I had an ortho wire and no front teeth, basically no upper front teeth. And the next 18 months were spent in and out of dental offices, dental specialty offices, plastic surgery offices. And they were able to, this amazing team was able to restore my smile. And that was the very first introduction to my desire to potentially be a practitioner, a clinician, and do what these amazing people were able to do. The only problem was that I was a kid that had learning disabilities and attention problems all through high school. And so I played collegiate college football for a couple of years, and then I decided to hang up the cleats and focus on trying to get into dental school. And my learning disabilities kind of persisted, and I had maybe an average dental school application, average test scores, average GPA. So when I started applying to dental schools, you could imagine that I wasn't getting accepted, right? So it ended up taking me 3 years and 21 tries to finally get a single acceptance into dental school. During that time, that ended up being a really important time for me because I bought my first business, which was a catering truck. And I also applied for and got accepted to the executive MBA program at the University of San Diego. Period, a 3.5-year period that I was not in dental school. And so I got to dental school with a different perspective. First of all, I didn't ever take my degree for granted, right? Or the fact that I was in dental school, that I finally got accepted. It wasn't easy for me like it was for a lot of my classmates that went straight into the best, undergrads and then had their pick of dental schools and were the top of their class. That wasn't me. I was the person that barely got in. So I had a different kind of perspective and a gratitude for being there. Also, I had a different level and depth of business understanding than other people did. So when I got into dental school, I knew that I was already kind of delayed. I was behind my classmates, so I knew that I had to make up for time. So I decided while I was still in dental school that I wanted to be a multiple practice owner, and I was going to leverage some of my business knowledge to become a multiple practice owner. And fast forward, I guess 21 years, I just sold the last of my 16 dental practices 6 months ago and hung up the handpiece. Um, uh, it was a really, really incredible journey. But all along the way, owning 16 dental practices, I learned a lot about how to be a more effective leader, how to be more systemized, how to be more profitable and efficient. And I learned that in the trenches, doing pretty much everything the wrong way first, and then being able to correct course and then learn it the right way. And it was about 12 years ago that I opened my coaching and consultancy business called the Dental Success Institute. 8 years ago that I started my podcast, which now is, in 151 countries. I'm so blessed. And so that's kind of an abbreviated version of my history.
Wow. Wow. Well, and then the first time I ever heard you speak was at the Dental Speaker Institute, and you shared your story in more depth and detail because you were giving a keynote about what brought you into dentistry. And what a compelling story in your very abbreviated version. Like today, we're not really able to give it justice, but it really is a testament to, not only with that happening to have you really have that desire and drive to go into dentistry, but also when you look at all the rejection that you faced and all of the adversity to even get into dental school, it shaped who you were to make you become, someone who's really able to help and to really come at dentistry from a different angle than most dentists do. So who knew when you were going through all that was preparing you not only for your businesses but also to be able to help others. That's awesome. And here's what I would say is something that we have in common, something else that we have in common. You were talking about learning by making mistakes. When I was a dental office manager, I think I made all of them. I mean, I know I called one or two denture patients on accident because I didn't know where to look to see that they didn't have any teeth to tell them that they were past due for their hygiene appointment. Right. I mean, that has to top them all right there. So,
I love that.
awesome. Well, tell us more about the dental success companies, the history of how you started them and probably what your why was. Would love to hear about that.
Sure. Interestingly enough, the dental success companies happened by accident. When I was when I had my first 4 dental practices here in Arizona, um, we were having a very difficult time staffing them up. Um, Rural areas don't have people with a lot of dental experience oftentimes. There's a large percentage of the people that aren't versed in technical trades. A lot of people would go to the junior college or join the military or get involved with real estate or hospitality or even become medical assistants, but very few people were interested in dentistry in my rural area. So we were having a very difficult time staffing up these practices that were very vibrant and doing very well. But that was always one of the big things that we struggled with was human resources and getting enough really good qualified people into our dental practices. So I came up with this idea that we would start training inside my offices, and I created a curriculum for a dental assisting school. And so we started teaching dental assistants in the lobby of some of my dental offices, and we teach them hands-on, and then we would teach them kind of the vocabulary, et cetera, of dental assisting. And it was a 12-week course, and we got it passed through the State Board of Post-Secondary Education, and it became an additional profit center because we were able to use the dental office as basically our classroom. So other people started asking me how I did this, and we were able to cherry pick some of the best people from those classes. And it's funny, 20 years later, some of the original people that trained with me as dental assistants are still in the field, and some are hygienists, some are dentists now. So
Wow.
it was a really cool start of, getting into education. So I started speaking on stages because people would ask how I was able to create this other profit center and cherry pick the best students from my dental assisting schools. And that blew up into Horizon Schools of Dental Assisting, where we ended up with over 220 locations of the dental assisting school around the country. And when the time had come, and that company had ran its course because we basically sold all of the territories throughout the country, people started asking me to speak on stages about my multiple practice ownership and some of the things that I learned as a dental practice owner, a multiple practice owner. And that spun off into people asking if I could coach them onto, to be a more effective business owner, which I started doing one at a time. And that kind of snowballed into the Dental Success Institute, where we had 12 clients to begin with, and then 25, and now we have close to 230 clients from almost each of the 50 states. I think we're in 44 states now. And that led
That's
to
wonderful.
the Dental Success Network, which is a buying group and a virtual continuing education provider, and this really cool, vibrant communication platform. And that has almost 1,400 dentists in it now. So yeah, and all along the way, well, about 8 years ago, we started talking about all of these things and all these interactions on the podcast, which has blown up to be one of the biggest. So yeah, that's kind of the history of the Dental Success companies.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know one of my clients years ago, probably because he heard about your model, decided to start his own. And he still has it. He got it approved through the board in Texas. And I think they're like on their 14th or 15th class. And it has really, again, rural Texas, but it's provided him with staffing that he otherwise would not have had. And hey, you pioneered that. Who would have thought that we would be in the staffing crisis that we're in now? And what a great model that is. And I love how you've learned how to do things and simply shared with others, and it's created that demand, that organic demand for the services and the groups that you've put together. That's awesome. I would
Thank you.
love to hear, you've not talked about the word necessarily yet, or these words yet. You've highlighted when you're talking about your history and the things that you've put together, a couple of different principles, one being leadership. Obviously you've got many people that are coming to you for not only thought leadership, but also the systems that you've put together. So I would love to hear some key insights from you, even though I know this is probably like a 3-day course that you teach, on what's most important about leadership and the systems in the practice.
Oh, this is great. I thank you so much. What a great question. Um, leadership and systemization go hand in hand. You can't have a great systemized practice unless you are first a good leader. And leadership is one of those kind of fuzzy terms that people throw around, and like, I want to be a better leader, or leadership is the hallmark of my dental practice. But when you go to define it, a lot of people can't put their finger on exactly what that means. What does it mean to be a good leader? Um, First of all, it does not mean that you're super charismatic or you're able to hold a conversation for an hour talking into a Zoom screen, or comfortable speaking in front of 1,000 people on stage at a dental conference. That does not necessarily mean leadership. Leadership, more than anything else, just means that you have a connection with the people that are following you, and you are able to share with them very, very crystal clear expectations of what success looks like for their position, right? So when you break that down, it really is quite simple. Like, the ability to communicate in an empathetic manner, and the ability to really just say, hey, here's what I expect from you, and here are the resources that I'm going to provide to you, and here's the support that I'm going to give you, and let's check in once a week, and let's make sure that there's some accountabilities, that if you're straying from the path that we've mutually agreed upon, then we have kind of a mechanism to bring you back, and here is your exact definition of what success looks like for your position. And if you can do that in an effective manner, then you have become a strong leader. Once again, it doesn't require a bunch of charisma, but it does take a caring approach in order to do that, and not alienate your people. Now, there's a difference between an effective leader and a micromanager. An effective leader gives their team enough leeway to be able to get to the desired result with enough autonomy that they can author their own path to a certain degree. A micromanager stands over their shoulder and makes sure that every single step is exactly the way that it was designed on a piece of paper. And that usually leads to burnout and very, very high turnover. So with that, with that definition comes the ability for the leader to create systems that help to run the dental practice, right? So effective systems don't mean that you're reading off, like, once again, a checklist or a piece of paper and not looking up all day long. It just means that, hey, we all have a common goal here and we're going to get to it together. And you can help me design what that looks like, but we're going to do that the same way every single time. So systemization, before I had systemization, everybody was kind of coming to me. And at one point I had 120 team members. And before I learned how to be a good leader and become very systemized, it was a very, very difficult position to be in with all those humans looking to me for guidance. And I have to say that I was probably less stressed after having, 14 dental practices at once versus having 3 dental practices in the beginning when I didn't understand these concepts.
Wow. Well, yeah, because I'm thinking, did you say 100, 140? How many team members?
120.
120.
120.
Well, and you've got not only got them, you have their interpersonal relationships with each other. That's like that almost equals 1 million, right? I mean, that's a lot of lot of relationships and teams and different things like that. So, I love what you said about leadership, because I think so many of us now, if you throw a term like culture out, a lot of people may say, oh, I don't really know what that is. But most people, if you would say, well, what's leadership? They might at first say, well, I know exactly what that is. Yet I love that you kind of touched on that most people don't.
It's true. Culture is another big one, Penny. You and I could talk all day about culture. We could talk all day about, but leadership is one of those things that I don't think people recognize that leadership takes a soft touch, but it also takes kind of really strong parameters and expectations. I, for a long time, was a micromanager. I was like a dictatorial leader. And I thought, that was the right thing to do. I thought, never let anybody take advantage of you, make sure that, it's your way or the highway. And that it just simply doesn't work. Not just in today's human resources climate, but ever, like in the history of humans, it's never been an effective way to lead people. And to me, as I've gotten, more seasoned in the industry, I have to say that it's more and more important to me to make sure that my people respect me first. Liking me is an added bonus, but not necessary. But respect me first and feel as though they're supported in their position. And if you can do that, then you have elevated to become a strong leader.
That's great. So I would, because I was a practice management coach for many, many years. I mean, obviously, I think the first thing would be, well, hey, Mark, how do we go about getting systems? I would say, don't reinvent the wheel. Work with, it's like, how do I improve my golf game? Well, you can go out every single day with your golf clubs by yourself, and work to try to improve your game and come up with better processes, or you can hire a coach. So, if someone says, okay, how does one go about, what's the mindset or the process for developing a system for improving something? If you wouldn't mind sharing that. But let me first and foremost say, big believer in coaching. That's how we began to grow the first practice that I ever worked in, and how I found out about consulting was what I would say was we did it the hard way for a while. And then we found a group that we thought, hey, we'll give them a try. And we got everybody on board, and it was amazing what we were able to accomplish when we were all working together, rowing in the same direction, and, had some clear systems in the practice. But tell me a little bit about your process of developing a system for something.
Yeah, sure. First, I'll tell you just a little quick story. When I had my first 3 dental practices, they were very, very successful. Um, and, I thought I was God's gift to dental practice ownership, until my key players started leaving. I had a couple office managers leave at the same time for, a transfer, or, leaving the state because their husband was in the military, and or wanted to just go into a different profession. And then I had a couple really good associates leave at the same time as well. And I realized that I wasn't the actual reason for the success of these dental practices. It was these key players and what they had in their brains. And I never took the time to download what was in their brains. Like, what were you doing that was so great? And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, they had a system for running this business. I have no idea what it is. And now it's gone. It's gone poof with them. Now they did, the standard, I'm going to train somebody for a week before I leave, their replacement. That's nowhere near long enough to download everything that they have in their brain. So I had this business coach that he used to say, you have to have an alien abduction manual for everybody on your team, which means that if anybody on your team is abducted by aliens, you could plug somebody right into their position and they have a manual that they can follow from A to Z, which is going to help decrease the amount of attrition or negative effects of them leaving. So this alien abduction manual is kind of like an operations manual for your dental practice. So whenever we're looking at an initiative that we're trying to systemize, or when we're creating a system for a role or a task within a dental practice, we always try to enlist the help of somebody that is already doing it and doing it well. Right. So the more authorship you can get from people that exist in that position, the more you're going to be able to get buy-in from the entire team. Right. So if you just take, a 300 page operations manual that you wrote over the weekend and just kind of throw it down on the desk and say, this is what we're doing now, you're going to get very little buy-in. People will never open that thing. It'll collect dust and it'll just be a very expensive, time-consuming paperweight that you put together. But if you get people to help you kind of download exactly what they do from moment to moment in this particular task, and you get their authorship, then they're going to be more encouraged to utilize that as a training manual for the next person that is potentially taking their position, or maybe a colleague that's going to be sitting next to them and doing some overlapping tasks. So we've always found that authorship is really, really important, but also making sure that you're crystal clear about what success in that particular role and that task looks like, and then reverse engineering it. A lot of times you're like, okay, tell me what you do from day to day. And people are like, well, I don't know. I just do it. And you have to take the time to sit down with them and say, all right, we're going to break this down into chunks. And I want you to author what you do in order to get from this start to this endpoint, and then again and again and again, until you have enough chunks to get to the end of the task. And then you put it together in a manual, and then that becomes the training manual for all future people that are going to be sitting in that seat.
Yeah, I love that. And in hearing you talk about that with the authorship, and it makes me also think, which I guess an authorship is ownership, that they feel like they're part of something, and it, doing the same thing over and over, at least for my personality type, sounds like one of the least fun things ever to do, right? So, but being able to step outside of whatever a regular role may be, if I'm a dental assistant, and to say, hey, you want my input on how to do this? It really honors making them feel important. And to your point, going back to what you said about leadership, I mean, that's a genuine way to do that as well. It elevates them. It puts everybody on the same playing field. And I love the thought process on that. And it makes me think, my start as a consultant, I started out with Fortune Management, and, it was co-founded by Tony Robbins. And at the time he was still very active in Fortune. And I remember one time him talking about, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And so, as you were talking through that, the dental assistants in your organizations now are standing on the shoulders of the ones that came before, right? That already knew how to do this, right? And you, through your systems, were able to capture that and pass that along. And I think that's the essence of what it means, to work together and to grow and develop. So I love the thought process behind that. And I'm sure that will be helpful to those listening. But let me also say, and you'll hear me, say it many times in many different places, big believer in having a coach. I had a couple of different business coaches when I had my small business, and maybe it's from years of playing sports, right? It just makes sense. You can't see what's going on the field when you're out there in the middle of the game.
It's so, so true. An objective third party view and advice based on what somebody sees that's not completely focused on your everyday life is so, so valuable. I mean, you could utilize so many different analogies, a lot from the sports world. It's like, the best in the world, the best anything. LeBron has a coach, Tiger Woods
Mhm.
has a coach, everybody that is a top performer, every single Olympian that wins a gold medal has a coach. Um, and it's the ability, and none of those people did it better than them. LeBron's coach can't do what he does. Tiger's
Right.
coach can't do what he does. And Michael Phelps's coach can't swim as fast as he can, but they have the ability to look at what you're doing from an objective third party view and say, hey, if you did this just slightly different, we're going to shave, 0.07 seconds off of your finish time or whatever.
Mhm.
So important to get that to get that guidance. And I've always had coaches my entire career, still do, even though I've coached maybe thousands at this point of people. I still have a coach that's helping with business strategy. I have a coach that helps me with my performance and my physical output. Um, it's so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that. Love the thinking and what you were saying too about a coach is they bring out the best in people. And when you were talking about, I'll make one other leadership comment here, and then I definitely want to segue into because I bet everyone's interest is piqued in learning more about how to follow more of what you do. But it made me think of John Wooden. And now I never met him in person. I saw him on some videos, and I would say he is charismatic, or he was charismatic, even though he was more soft spoken. He was one of these that very quietly led. He had a presence about him, and that was someone that came to mind as far as being a great leader without necessarily being someone that could, get up on a stage and get everybody all riled up and and excited. So I think that's important because at least in my experience with coaching dentists, everybody's not doesn't consider themselves to be a leader, right? It's like, I don't really feel like I am a leader, Penny. That's why I hired you. And I'm like, well, you also hired me to, help bring that out because one day I may, I won't be here, right? We want the team to look at you and see you that way and see your team leaders that way. So, I love that you said there's not just one leadership type because I think for a lot of people they say that so they think they can opt out of it. Yet I don't really think and maybe you can comment on this and then we'll talk about how others can reach you. I don't think as a dentist or especially a dental business owner that you can hand that leadership baton off to someone else while you're still active in the business. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's such great points, Penny. The Michael Gerber talks about the difference between delegation and abdication. Now, delegation is effectively handing off tasks when you are still making sure that those tasks are being done correctly. That means you're providing all resources, you're providing accountability, you're providing support. That's effective delegation. Abdication is when you're just handing something over and you never check in again. It's like, I don't know how to be a leader, so you're now the leader, and then you're gonna go cut crown preps. That
Mhm.
is not effective leadership. That, in fact, that will never work in business ownership. There has to be some mechanism where you're holding people accountable, and ultimately, like it or not, if you're going to get into this world of management, executive level, associateship, or business ownership, you're going to have to develop some leadership muscle, like it or not. And if you
Yeah.
can't, you'll never be the most successful as you can be. So yes, I completely agree with your sentiment there, Penny. And again, the difference between that delegation and abdication is key here. If you feel as though you're handing something over to somebody else so you never have to do it again and never check in again, it will never work. It'll never work.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Well, Mark, I think I could talk to you for days, maybe without even taking a break, because I think you and I are in alignment in a lot of how we think, and I'm definitely enjoying learning from you, and I so appreciate your investment of time to be with us today. If you wouldn't mind, I will also put it in the show notes. If you would share with our listeners and also viewers the best way to follow your podcast, the best way to learn more about your Success Institute.
Sure, Penny. Thank you so much again for having me today. You're one of the people that I looked up to from the very beginning when I started doing this. You're one of the big names, and
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate what you do for our profession. As far as reaching out to me, it's very simple. You can go to truedentalsuccess.com and find out anything that's happening in the dental success universe. You can listen to me on the Dentalpreneur podcast. Type it in anywhere that you get podcasts. My kids thought it was so cool when they were younger. They would say it into Alexa, let me hear the Dentalpreneur podcast, and it would pop up. So they thought I was like super famous because they could
That's
do
funny.
that in the
That
car.
is
They
so
thought it was so
funny.
cool. And then I'm very active on all socials, but probably the fastest way, if you want to just reach out to me, is follow me on Instagram, Dr. Mark Costes, Costes. And if you direct message me, I will get back to you almost immediately. So those are the best ways, Penny.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And we again appreciate it so much. And thank you for being such a good friend to eAssist. And we look forward to having you on the show for a future episode if you're willing to join us.
I will always say yes if you ever ask me again. So thank you so
Okay.
much again for.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Take care. The Dental MBA podcast is sponsored by eAssist Dental Solutions, a platform dedicated to helping dentists get paid faster and get paid more. Dental insurance billing services provided through the eAssist platform can relieve your dental insurance headaches, get your over 90-day insurance receivables near zero, and help you collect 100% of what you're rightfully owed by insurance companies. To learn more about how the eAssist platform can solve your revenue cycle management needs, or to schedule a free consultation, please visit dentalbilling.com.